Hi guys, this is Mike. In this Cinema 4D modeling tutorial, I'm going to show you how to make complex shapes using split, disconnect, and subdivision surface. A lot of times when you're making a model, you want to be able to add in some details. And in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to add in some paneling on a model and give it some fine-tuned details. Go to Primitives and choose a capsule. Go to NB on your keyboard to bring up garage shading lines. Let's zoom in a bit and let's go to our Z orientation. And I want to add in some segments into the height. So let's stretch this out a bit. Just going to pull this, just want to make it a little bit longer. And let me go back to my capsule and add in some height segments. Seems about right. C on the keyboard to make this editable. Let's go to F2 on the keyboard for our top view. And like I said, I want to add in some surface detail. And say I want to make some type of generator or turbine, you want to add in some kind of a sci-fi paneling. And so what I want to do is I want to go to Select, and let's make sure I'm in edge mode. Select, and I'm going to come down here where it says path selection. So we know we have our center line here, and say I want to add in sort of a just a detail here. Go to our center line, go about 3 over. And it looks like I made a mistake. Let me just back up, try that again. Go over 1. Okay. So we have this path selected. And if you go into perspective mode, you can kind of take a look at this. Let me zoom in a bit. And so what I want to do is I want to go to my select and I want to go to fill selection. And so when you hover over your highlighted selection from your edges, you can just click on this right in the center, and you can see that now it selects the polygons within your edge. And what we can do is we can add in, or we could use split or disconnect. I'm going to use disconnect for this particular, in this particular case. So you're going to go to Mesh, Commands, and Disconnect. And you can see as you pull this up, it's disconnected from our original model. Now we still have one object, but it's just this part is disconnected. I'm going to go to Subdivision Surface, holding down Option, and I'll put our capsule within the subdivision surface. And if I zoom in, you can see what's happening with our smoothing. So I'm going to hide this. You can see how that turns out. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to go to my normal scale, and if I zoom in a bit, you can see how this scales in just a little bit uniformly along its normals. You just want to give a little bit of a gap here. Let me zoom out. And now what I can do is I can go down to my edge mode, and if I zoom in a bit, you can see that we have our edges selected for both the original main part of our capsule and our disconnected part. So if I hide the subdivision surface or hide that, you can see how both of these edges are selected. And what I want to do is now go to our extrude tool, and we can extrude down, and you can see what this does. If I zoom in a bit, and we can extrude down this way. Let me undo. I want to take a look at this again. Okay, I want to extrude in a different way. Instead of using the extrude where you can just click and drag, I want to command click and drag within this axis. You can see this arrow that we have here highlighted. Click and hold and drag downwards. And what that's going to do is that's going to give us a bit of a seam here within our object. And we can extrude one more time, bring this down a bit. Let me zoom out and you can see how this looks. Let me render. And you can see now that we have this surface now disconnected from our object, and it gives us this really nice seam, especially when you add in some ambient occlusion. Really gives some really nice details to your object. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my capsule. I'm going to go to my polygon mode. Let me zoom in a bit. And I want to go to select. Oops, I didn't mean to pull that off. Select, and I want to go to select connected. And that's going to select all these other polygons, but not the rest of the object because we disconnected it. And we can just pull this up a little bit. You can see how this turns out now. Now you can do all kinds of different ideas and designs on this. And so what I want to do is I want to go to my polygon mode and let's zoom out a bit, and I want to add in, say, maybe some type of stand here for this generator. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to loop mode, UL, and let's put this like, say, here. And this might actually be useful if I go to the side, our side view. Let's put one here and here. So we selected these two loops. And what I want to do is I want to go to my rectangle selection. Let's make sure we have tolerance selection checked. And I'm going to hold down Option. Oops, excuse me. Hold down Control. And let's deselect these ones at the top. Let's go our perspective mode. And I think I want to deselect one more group of polygons. So I want to select these, just these two right at the top. Okay. With these selected, what I want to do next is I want to split these off from this particular object. Instead of using the disconnect, the split, what we'll do is we'll create a copy of the selected object, but it won't delete away from the capsule. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click. I'm going to come down here where it says split. You can press UP on your keyboard. Now, I want you to understand that this split, the object, will be underneath in the object manager, and it will be the capsule.1. And so what we can do is if I go with this capsule and I want to hide this, you can see that our capsule is still unaffected from our object. So it's not split off at all. And you can see this if I go to, if I hide our subdivision surface. So if I go back to my capsule split, the object that we split off, I'm going to Command A and I'm going to select all of the polygons. Make sure you're in polygon mode. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to extrude our object, but instead of extruding, say if I press E on the keyboard and I extrude, excuse me, make sure this is selected. And say I extrude, you can see that it extrudes along its normals. So if I hold down Command and then drag downwards, it's going to make this extrusion straight down. And then what I can do is I can press T in this axis, holding down Shift so we can move in 10-degree increments until we get to 0. Now we have a flat surface in which to work off of. And now what I can do is I can extrude down one more time. And let me do an inner extrude as well. So extrude inner. I'm just going to bring that in, say around there. So if I put this in a subdivision surface and say for an example, I select these two objects, Option G. Now we're in a null. And if I do a quick render, see now that we have this object and it's disconnected from our, or it's split technically from our capsule. So it's just a few different techniques combined into one in order to give us different options when we're modeling. So let's continue doing a few different things. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in a bit. And we have our capsule, and I'm going to call this base just so I don't get confused. And maybe I'll call this generator. But really, I'm just just demonstrating. So we have our base, and say I want to go to KL. Maybe I want to put in a edge cut here. Kind of gives us a little bit more of an edge. And if I hide my generator, you can see that we have this open, this completely open hole here. And something that would have been useful is if I used, when I extruded down, we had a, you know, we will have sort of a back face to it, but you know, create cap on our extrusion, but that's okay. We can do a few different things here. We can go to our base. Let's turn off our subdivision surface for a moment. UL, and make sure we're in edge mode. We can select, let me just zoom in, just make sure I select the correct loop. Do the same thing over here. And in fact, let me do this one at a time. I think that would probably be better. I can extrude this, but let's go to our edge angle. Let's maybe bend this in a bit. Maybe bring this down as well. And then what you can do is you can add in another cut, say around here. Let's take a look at the subdivision surface, see what we get. Not too bad. And now if I go to my generator, pull this out, and let's zoom out a bit, and we can do a render. You can see how that turns out. And I'm going to do the other side as well. So I finished up the other side of the base. So let's continue making another detail within our surface of our model. We'll use the same technique. Let's go to the side view. Let's go to loop, make sure we're in our polygon mode, and let's select a few polygons here in this loop. And I'm going to go to my live selection tool. Holding down Control, let's deselect these polygons. And let me add in a few here and deselect here. Now this doesn't have to be exactly the way that I have it, my pattern that I have, but something similar. D on the keyboard to extrude, but we're going to go inwards. And let me extrude again. Pull this down and extrude one more time just to give a nice edge at the bottom. Now I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to disconnect. So I'm going to go to Mesh, Commands, Disconnect. And let's go to our line mode, UL on your keyboard. And let's select, let me zoom in so I can see a little bit better. Let's go to Extrude, and we're going to have an edge angle of 90. And I want to extrude in so it kind of bends underneath the model and towards the inside. UL, and I want to go to Select Boundary Loop for our loop selection. Select again for our area that we disconnected. We're going to go to Extrude, and we're going to extrude so we bend in a little bit. Something like this. Now let me zoom out. Let's give it a render. You can see that we have this nice little edge that goes around our insert, or this inset that we have. And you can increase your subdivision surface in your editor. So when we go to our render, our viewport looks a little bit smoother. So let's try another technique. Let's go to our side view. Select our generator. And what I want to do is I want to go to my rectangle selection, polygon mode. Let's select these polygons. And let's do a disconnect. And zoom in. We're going to do something the same that we did before. So we're going to go to line mode, UL. And I want to take off the select boundary loop. D on the keyboard. And I'm just going to extrude inwards. Select again on this side, extrude inwards again. And if you go inside your model, you can kind of see how that looks. Let's do a render. Oops, excuse me. Move that out of there. Let me pull back so you can see a little bit better. If you do a render, you can kind of see this edge. But it's going to look even better if you go to, say, an ambient occlusion. That's when things really start to look pretty nice. And you can see that we have a nice edge here that goes along. Let me zoom out a bit. And you can add in these details just like I did with all the other parts of our model. So let's do something similar over here. Let's go to our side view. Let's do a rectangle selection. Let's select these polygons here. Make sure I'm in polygon mode. And UL. And I want to select or deselect right at the top here. Go back to our side view. L, which will give us our enable manipulation tool for our axis. Go to E, and let's just pull this back to this edge right here. L again. T. And if I go to perspective mode, you'll be able to see this the result a little bit better. In this axis, I'm going to pull this back around here. Looks good. And if I go to my side view again, rectangle selection, let's select these polygons. In fact, let's select just this part, and we're just going to pull this back a little bit. Something like here. And maybe I want to put in a little bit of edge sharpening. So KL, and let's maybe put a cut here and a cut here, and maybe one here. See how that looks. Do a render. Looks pretty good. The only thing I want to do is maybe split this off or disconnect this one edge. Let's put our subdivision surface on. Okay, so one other thing I want to do, and you can do a bunch of different of your own experiments, but what I want to do is I want to go to my side view again, rectangle selection, and I want to select, say, these polygons here. So kind of have an insert into this area, maybe select these, see how that looks. So maybe I want to insert a little bit just like I did here, and we have this little connection in this bend here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to extrude that in a little bit, pull this back down, and then one more extrude to tighten up that bottom. Let me zoom in. Mesh, commands, disconnect, edge mode, UL. And let's zoom in some so we can see a little bit better. D, we have our 90 degrees. I'm going to pull this in. UL, make sure we have select boundary loop. D, pull that in. Zoom out. So now we have this detail that comes across here. And you can add in as much detail as you like, just like we've been doing. Maybe you want to add in something similar to what we have over here. And say we go to mesh, commands, disconnect. Let me zoom in a bit, and maybe I want to use the scale normal. And just kind of bring this in a little bit. Go to UL, go to our edge, and let's select, see if we can select this loop. Might be a little bit difficult considering where we are here. It's better. This might be a little bit tricky since we're going to be extruding up and in. So we might have to extrude. Go to polygon mode, select connected, and then maybe pull this down, command click and drag. Try that again. And you can always scale this a little bit as well. Let's do a render. That's looking pretty cool. And let's pull this back a little bit. So you can do these techniques on all of your objects. And maybe you can actually put in a little bit more definition here on your base. So what I mean is maybe go to your, maybe select these polygons down here at the bottom. So I'm going to go to my side view. And let's turn off our tolerance selection. Go to my perspective view. Command click and drag. Let's go to UL. Let's take off our select boundary loop. Select this and select this. And we can do an extrude and give it more of a chunkier base. Let's look at the sub D. And we can put in some edge cuts just to sharpen up this base a little bit. So put one on either side. Let's put one down here as well. And one here. Let's take a look at our sub D, and that's giving it more of a base. We'll make sure we do the other side as well. So right at the bottom on either side. And one here, and one here. Let's pull back out. And do one last render. So as you can see, we can add in a lot of detail and a lot of complex shapes, and you can continue adding in different details, interlocking shapes. But as you can see, we really just started off with just a capsule, and using the split, disconnect, and sub D, you can quickly start making a lot of complex shapes. And of course, you can do a lot more than this, but just experiment and play around with different these techniques on your own models. I put a link in the description to download project files. You can also go to astronomic3d.com to download project files from this tutorial and all the tutorials that I've made so far. Thanks for watching.